This is Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, and today we're going to be learning Siman Mem Dalid and as well Siman Mem Hey Sif Aleph. And Siman Mem Dalid coins the Machaber Isser Sheina B'Tefilin, the forbidden, the Isser, the transgression to sleep in one's Tefillin. It says the Machaber calls Mancha Tefillin B'Roishai. As long as the Tefillin are on your head, or Bizra, your arm, Asr Lishan Mem, one is not allowed to sleep. Afilu Shina Saraya, a very important nikuda, very important detail, even a temporary sleep. Unless he puts on them, and we turn over the page over here, unless you put in your tefillin, sudra handkerchief loyasi ma'isha, and as well, your wife is not with you, then yashen ba'em shinasarai. So if you have two details, if you cover up the tefillin and one's wife is not with them, then he's allowed to take a nap in the tefillin. What should he do? Put your head between your legs, and you should sit, and in that position you can take a nap. If your tefillin are wrapped up in your hand, then you're allowed to sleep, even a sad sleep. But if you hold your tefillin and they're not wrapped up, then also then you're not allowed to do even a temporary sleep. Says the Ramah, only without their boxes. Shari, it is allowed. So let's go back and let's begin the Mishnah Berurah over here, in which the Mishnah Berurah comments on the fact that one is not even allowed to sleep. Ishinas arai in his tefillin, says Mishnah Berurah, Sekot and Aleph, the guys, where does this Isser come from? Says Mishnah Berurah, it's forbidden because one might come to pass gas with them, and therefore by putting a sudr, by putting a handkerchief on top of them, Yizkar, he's going to remember, will remember he's wearing tefillin, and he will not come to pass gas. So the interesting detail, it's not that the cover of the tefillin allows one to pass gas with them, but rather, once they are covered, then he's not going to pass gas, he's going to remember he's wearing his tefillin. And said the Machaber, it's only if his wife is not with him in bed. It's forbidding his even taking a nap is forbidden because we're afraid he might come to sleep with his wife. It's not considered not thinking about the tefillin. Unless he's sitting and laughing and joking around. If he's working, and you're not positively thinking about it on the tefillin, still so we're learning an interesting detail that as a chadas of tefillin does not mean you have to be positively, cognizantly thinking about your tefillin all the time. Rather, passively, with realization you're wearing your tefillin is enough. Joking around and laughing, that is not allowed. But passively wearing your tefillin, that is, and not thinking about them is allowed. Unless you're thinking about your bodily needs so much, and therefore your heart and your mind moves away from Yerushalayim. But when you sleep, you forget the emptiness of this world. Says Mishnah Berurah, that was, I just said, you don't need positive das, you don't need to have full cognizance that you're wearing your tefillin, that is only one level. But the higher level, the mitzvah min ha-muvchar, is always to be realizing that you're wearing tefillin, and never to stop thinking about them, to think about anything else. That's the reason why you should always be touching and realizing that you are wearing your tefillin. Zulas, aside from B'shas Tefillah, if you're davening and learning, then you don't have to be concerned to have positive mindset about your tefillin. Shina Zaraya, temporary sleep, says Mishmur of God and Dalit Vein, Shirla Zed, there's no set amount of time. So what should he do? You should be have between your legs, being Birkov Sivkot and Hay, says Mishmur, if you lie down, we're worried you might fall into a deep sleep. Then it is mutter Sivkot and Vav, says Mishmur, Lishan to sleep, if you're not worried about passing gas, because it's talking about the case that tefillin are wrapped up in your hand. But if not, then also leashing now let us sleep the chashin sham yiplam miyadai. If they're not wrapped up, we're afraid they might fall. B'chol in shari, and we concluded in Sivkot and Ches that the Ramah says if they're in their box and bag, then it's always mutter dafilim yiplu al karkos. Even if they fall on the ground, ein chashash kol kach. It's not such a big deal. Of course, you never want to drop your tefillin, but if they're in their nartik, then it's not such a problem. As we've seen, there has to be an empty space of a teva, then it is a chasisa, or we'll point out, as we've seen many times, it's not in its own bag, it's in a tik, it's in a double covering. And now let's begin. Simin Memei says the Machaber din Tefilin beis hakvarus beis hamerchatz. What are the halachas regarding wearing your tefillin in a cemetery or in a bathhouse? Says the Machaber Seval Pasali Kanis beis hakvarus a b'teich arba amos shal meis u'tefillin b'roshei. Two different halachas. You're not allowed to enter into a bathhouse, and you're not allowed to enter into a cemetery, or you're not allowed to enter in within 4 amos of a mace. Why? Misham leig l'rosh, because it's laughing, it's mocking the dead. However, it is mutter. And we know this halacha more commonly. We don't wear tefillin all day from one's tzitzis, that one should not have their tzitzis out near a cemetery or a dead person because of leig l'rosh. It's teasing the dead that they cannot do a mitzvah. But once they are tucked in, it is allowed. Says Mishavur Sevkot and Al Beis Hakvaros Vafilu Toich Bel Amos Shal Makam Atzchos Hakvarim even within 4 amos at the beginning of the graves. Kam Kein Asur Yakim B'Chitzah Mafsekes B'Neiim. It's forbidden unless there is a proper machitza. The fact that the Machaber did not mix it together and say, also Leil Talad Amos Toch Shel Kever Oy Shal Meis. You know why the Machaber didn't write it that way? The Balaramis, it's teaching us, it's hinting. Or it's the area of the cemetery itself. Even if you're 4 amos away from the grave. There are those that are lenient. When you're in the middle of a cemetery and the graves all around, you should be machmer even 4 amos away from the kever. Which is not the case when you're at the end of a basic kvaros. There's not yet any graves there, just set aside for graves. Then you don't have to be machmer for the letter of the law. Says Mishnah Berurah, of course. You should never enter in at all within the walls of the basic kvaros while wearing your tefillin. What is the reason? Of course, because you might come within the dalamos of a kever. We conclude today's share with Sivkat and Beis. Mishnah Berurah says of a grave of a maze because of a terrace against him. The entire room that a mace is within Chashak Del Amish Al Mace, you're not allowed to enter into the room while wearing your tefillin. Even a child, he doesn't even reach the age of chinuch. Doesn't necessarily mean that practically he can be doing the mitzvah. It's the teasing and the taunting of the dead, even if the child is not of age. And we said, but if they're covered, it's mutter sivkot and gimel v'sar shegamar or turis yadam mechutzas. Everything has to be covered. Lefikach, therefore, afal b'sham adolikus b'tfilah shel yad, you're able to enter while wearing your tefillin shel yad levado halbu mechusa. Be careful. With there are 2 on your finger that those walls should be covered. And the next year, Mirz Hashem will pick up from Sif Beis.